Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with three key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live, as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent. Good evening, Malcontents. My name is David. I am the Malcontent, and welcome to another episode of Malcontentment Happy Hour. Today is January 21st, 2021. And I don't see anything on the chat client, which just has me a little concerned, Jennifer. I don't know if we just don't have anybody talking to us yet. Can one of the mods or admins type something in the chat client to make sure that it's working tonight? Jennifer, how are you doing?
I am pretty good. It's been a nice, quiet day, so I've been happy about that.
Oh, there we go. It just popped up. So it was there was a delay in the matrix on it wasn't anything on our side, but it's just popped up and it's rolling. Hello, everybody. The other question we have, hello, Tacoma. Thank you, Jason. The other question we have, we just want to confirm that everybody could hear Jennifer, who is now in new and improved living color and in full motion video tonight.
Woo! Sorry.
Okay, so we have an interesting show. Jennifer, this has been one of the quietest news cycle days in months.
I know, with the exception of the Bernie memes, which have been fantastic, which has kind of like dominated, everything at least I've been looking at today. It's been super quiet. I didn't wake up and go, oh man, I should look at the news and see what's going on. It was kind of weird, but also very enjoyable.
Yeah, I was the same way. I woke up this morning and my first thing was not like, let me look at my 4 news sites that I always go to look at. Let me look at Twitter. What's going on? What did I miss? I just kind of went up and went straight to the kitchen and made a cup of coffee. And it was like, oh yeah, I need to go check headlines, which is the first time in months. It's like, oh, okay, martial law hasn't been declared. We're not in civil war. Sidney Powell hasn't been made attorney general. Life is good this morning.
Yeah. I mean, we can't get like complacent, but it's better, definitely better than it was 24 hours ago.
It definitely is. And with that, Jennifer, let's go ahead and get started with the land acknowledgement.
Okay.
Take it away, Jennifer.
Okay, so we at Malcontent News are coming to you from Seattle, Washington, and we would like to acknowledge the Coast Salish peoples of this land, the land that touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Duwamish, Puyallup, Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. And this is the same land in which we all live and work and bring you the news from.
Jennifer, thank you so much for that. I am so glad that we have added that to the show. It's something we should have done a long time ago. And with that, I think we're just going to go ahead and jump into our first story.
Okay.
Our first story takes us to Seattle, where there was protests on Inauguration Day yesterday. We have some video on that. But before I start that, there's a couple of things I want to say. The first thing I want to say is, if you want to help out Malcontent News, here's what you can do. Like, follow, share, watch party. If you're not sharing this, share it out. Amplify the voice. Get more eyeballs seeing our content. The next thing is, reminder, our mods and admins are paid with hearts. They're not paid with anything else. So if you are on Twitter, Periscope, Facebook, spam those hearts. Let those mods and admins know that you really love and appreciate the hard work you do. If you are on Twitch or YouTube, you can just go, thank you, mods, or a big long line of hearts. They love that stuff. And they work hard so that Jennifer and I don't have to see some of the shit show comments that get out there. Although I have a feeling it's going to be a little calmer tonight, Jennifer.
Yeah, I agree. I loved the comment that said, "Oh my God, Jennifer is moving." Yeah.
I think you might be dropping 1 or 2 frames every minute here, but it is a lot better than what it was. So yes, we did some tech work, Jennifer and I, and her image is a lot better today and also a lot clearer. So we are close to dealing with those issues. Yeah, there were Inauguration Day protests. There were protests both from the left and the right across the United States. But the two that are grabbing the headlines are the ones that happened in Portland and the ones that happened in Seattle. Renee Rackety, our field producer, caught part of the Seattle protest later in the day. She's produced a video. We have a story up. We have a library of her pictures, malcontentnews.com. Just a reminder, on the Google News app, photo libraries, none of the photo libraries that are available out there in the universe that use Google AMP work. So if you want to see the photo library, you're going to have to access the website through a web browser. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and roll Renee's clip, Jennifer.
Okay.
Oh, actually, before I do that, little caveat. I stopped the clip. We're going to restart here in a second. This is going to show some scenes of police violence and protest. So there's a little bit of a trigger warning for our audience. If that is something you don't want to see, go find something else to do for about 90 seconds.
We have it clear where the arrests that are being made. Or result in serious injury. If you remain in the area just described, regardless of your purpose, you will be in violation of city and state law. The following routes of dispersal are available for you. Continue to go northbound on Lenora. Continue to go westbound, correction, eastbound on Lenora. Continue to go northbound on westbound.
Keep walking! Keep walking! Leave the area!
Heading east of western on Lenora Street to immediately disperse and leave the area. If you do not do so, you may be arrested or subject to other police action. Other police action would include the use of chemical agents or less lethal munitions, which may inflict significant pain or result in serious injury. You can continue to go eastbound on Lenora Street. You can go northbound on First Avenue or southbound on First Avenue. You have 3 minutes to disperse. Factors in the crowd have caused significant property damage.
I'm an old man. I don't remember none anymore. Not a thing. You know, every minute I will get next. The wife got it.
A lot to unpack, Jennifer, as we like to say during happy hour.
Mm-hmm. Yes, a lot to unpack there. Wow. That tasing was something.
Yeah, according to the Seattle Police Department, because there were questions raised about that action yesterday, when I initially heard reports that the individual was tased while they were being pinned, I was a little confused by that, because when somebody is tased, if they're pinned, then the people that are pinning them risk getting, because the way electricity travels, risk getting shocked also. So what the police did, it is a de-escalation technique, according to the Seattle Police Department, to kind of do when you do the energizing test on the taser. It's part of the, oh no, we're really serious. We're going to tase you if you don't comply with us. I am not defending SPD's actions, so people don't read into that. Neither am I condemning SPD. I am just telling people what Seattle police said was there. That's why they did what they did in that video. That this is an appropriate de-escalation technique.
Really? Because it looks like maybe kind of overcompensating or, show of authority when you have somebody already pinned down by what looked like 4 police officers to break out your taser and kind of charge it up by them. But that's just my personal opinion.
They looked pretty subdued at that point and had been subdued for a while. Now, part that we didn't catch, because as you see in that video, Renee, our field producer, is right by the LRAD vehicle. That's part of the reason why that audio is just as a little rough, is it was as loud as you think it sounds and listening to that. And she is quite a distance. One of these things they say is don't interfere with the arrest. So Renee then had to go further up to get to where that arrest was going. Eyewitnesses say, we close with that picture that Renee got of the knee clearly on the neck of that individual. Eyewitnesses there told Renee, including people that we trust, that we've interviewed in the past, said it was more than a minute that the knee was on the neck of that individual. It's my understanding, maybe somebody could put it in the comments, because I'm just going to say it's my understanding that Seattle police are not allowed to do knees to the neck. But I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, I don't know definitively, but that's a long time to have the weight of somebody on your neck. And like I said, it looked to be there was at least 4 officers pinning this individual down. So yeah, if that's not excessive, I don't know what is.
Seattle police arrested 3 people last night. About 100 people were participating in this action. Because I don't know what else to call it, right? I'm probably going to piss off some watchers tonight. It didn't feel like a protest to me. It just kind of felt, and I don't want to use, there's a word in my brain and it's not the right word either. And it's just, I don't know how to label it. Like when we were writing the news story, I know that I had a very hard time, because there wasn't even a clear message. It's like, it's anti-capitalism, anti-government. We're not happy Joe Biden got elected, because we wouldn't be happy with anybody who got elected because we don't like the government. And I know there was similar actions in Portland where the Democratic headquarters was attacked down in Portland yesterday, roughly at the same time the action was happening in Seattle.
I think it's interesting because a lot of stuff I see is that people are, very much concerned that Joe Biden represents more of the same. And so there are a lot of people that are worried that because we've gone from such a tumultuous presidency to something that seems a little more normal or calm, that people are going to get complacent and not push for the same kind of change. And I feel like some of that is where that angst is coming from. I'm not, defending or whatever one way or the other, but I think I'm just, from what I've been seeing, that's where that angst is coming from, is that, people can't get complacent now because things feel normal or back to status quo. And so there are some people that are really uneasy that if you sit too long, that's going to happen.
And I have some agreement with that, because I've seen in my circles some people who are very comfortable in their white suburban life are kind of like, problem solved. And it's like problems aren't solved. And there's people who saw on our either on our Twitter or our Instagram or our Facebook yesterday something that I wrote that institutional racism still exists. Nothing is really resolved here. Joe Biden's president, but that didn't fix anything. It stopped our hurtling to fascism, which is a good thing. There's no question about that. And nor am I jumping up and down here going, why hasn't Joe Biden done everything in, what, about 32 hours?
Yeah. I think the thing is, though, I think people saw how quickly we could tip towards fascism in the course of 4 years. So I think there's always going to be that concern there that, that scale could tip again in 2024. So people are really kind of quick to, or not quick to like judge what's happening, but really more cautious about sitting too long and letting that potentially happen again.
Callie C., one of our malcontents, and I also believe a part-time streamer, is reading from an OPA report that was from May about a knee on the neck. Officer in that case, knee on the neck for approximately 13 seconds. And the OPA concluded that the use of force was found to be improper and inconsistent with SPD policy and training. So that is for 13 seconds. So I would say we're probably looking at another OPA complaint.
Yeah, SPD is, keeping them numbers up in January, right?
I'm coughing again in the middle of the show. Yes, SPD is, they are racking up the hits, to say the least. There's another thing I want to say, and I want to be really clear with this, especially with, I don't want to say the chuds, because generally chuds just come in, raise trouble, and leave. But for the people that are more on the right here, I have defended right-wing protesters. I've actually defended Katie Davis Court on this show when she was maced for absolutely no reason, and I witnessed her being targeted and maced. If this was the Republican headquarters in Portland that had their windows and all smashed out, I would say the exact same thing. No. That is political intimidation. You can be mad at the system, but as far as I'm concerned, political offices it's just like the press. Those should be off limits. I was very disappointed when I saw that. I mean, I get the rage, I get the anger, I get the fear, and I get the concern, and I get that they're all in deep with the corporations. I won't deny any of that.
Yeah.
But there's no reason to attack somebody in the press, whether you're on the left or the right, because the press are there with their First Amendment rights. There is no reason to attack a political office because that is just intimidation.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think there's so much, like, I'm not defending it either. But I mean, I think I think one of the things too is it gives Republicans more fuel to be like, oh, Democrats aren't, calling out the violence in Seattle and Portland. And I think that, again, it just goes back to that angst of things still aren't where they need to be. And, you have a lot of white people who are like, yeah, let's just go back to brunch now because Biden's president and everything will be better.
Dora says that this type of violence is a symptom of the sickness within our system. It's a profound comment.
Yeah, very much so.
The other thing I will just close, and we'll move to the next segment, is Portland police and the feds in Portland went batshit crazy yesterday. We shared some of the stream from Boop Troop on our channel last night. It was almost an hour of continuous less lethal and tear gas down there. And some of the stuff we shared from Boop Troop, I mean, it sounded like a war zone. It sounded like Beirut or Iraq.
It's like they never learned anything from over the summer. My daughter had actually gone down there for part of the time and attended one of the protests. And she's 16. She got tear gassed. They were just like, I mean, it was insane down there. And I think it's just, I don't know. I think they let this ongoing narrative that's often pushed by conservatives and the far right that, it's basically Portland and Seattle are, completely anarchist and on fire, dictate how they respond.
Yeah, absolutely. And I bring that up because I want to say, because a lot of people like, well, what about the actions, right? In Portland, I'm talking about actions of protest. What about the actions? It was not proportional to, especially if we gauge by federal response to people storming the Capitol on January 6th. If we look at it through that lens, it was so not proportional in Portland.
No, not at all.
The other thing in Portland is that they use outdated tear gas munitions, and those outdated munitions release heavy metals and create chemicals that are actually closer to... tear gas is a chemical weapon, but they create actually older ones, the way they interact, the ingredients with them create gases that are closer to, like true battlefield chemical weapons, not a crowd control chemical weapon.
Wow. That's insane.
And so on that, I think we will do a little pause for the cause, and then we'll go to our next story.
Okay.
Hi, Malcontents. I'm David, the Malcontent, and I'd like to talk to you for a moment about supporting independent media. When you support us, you help us bring the before, during, and after. You help us defend the First Amendment. You help us amplify BIPOC and LGBTQIA voices, and you help us hold leaderships at a local, state, and federal level accountable. None of this would be possible without support by viewers just like you. When you become a patron for as little as $5 a month, you help buy technology, safety equipment, and help cover travel expenses so that we can continue to bring you news that you trust. If you can't become a patron, you can do a one-time donation on Venmo, and your dollars will go to the exact same causes. With your continued support, we can continue to amplify BIPOC and LGBTQIA voices while showing the truth on what is happening in the world around us. Once again, thank you.
Initially kind of came in and, said, hey, we're going to have to start moving people. And then a couple other people came in and we were like, no.
Wow, this exploded fast.
This is a story that Jennifer is bringing to us tonight about this tale of the Keystone XL pipeline that has extended. Jennifer, I think, is it 4 administrations? Didn't this kind of start like right at the end of the Bush administration?
Yeah. Then of course, they decided no, it's a no-go. And then Trump went ahead and signed off on the permits for construction. And then, of course, there was the DAPL protests in 2016 and 2017. So
you pulled together a video for us that kind of gives that history lesson. Do you want me to, we could roll that video and then just jump to you and you can do your thing?
Let's be honest, you pulled the video together. I just do the talking.
The question is, should the president approve a major extension of the Keystone XL pipeline? It's a debate that divides business, environmental groups, and labor unions. The pipeline would carry oil more than 1,700 miles from the tar sands of Canada to Port Arthur in the U.S. Gulf Coast, passing through half a dozen states along the way. In one, Nebraska, there was significant opposition to the plan.
The wide open spaces of central Nebraska are an unlikely battlefield, but this is where the two opposing sides come head to head in the fight over the Keystone XL pipeline.
And where it's going across
As now proposed, the pipeline would run right under Jenny Harrington's family farm. We spoke with her a few weeks ago.
Like a new roof, it's pretty great in the first 10 years, but you get 15, 25 years down the road and pipelines are going to leak, are going to rupture.
Good morning, everybody. Several years ago, the State Department began a review process for the proposed construction of a pipeline that would carry Canadian crude oil through our heartland to ports in the Gulf of Mexico and out into the world market. This morning, Secretary Kerry informed me that after extensive public outreach and consultation with other cabinet agencies, the State Department has decided that the Keystone XL pipeline would not serve the national interests of the United States.
This is with regard to the construction of the Keystone pipeline, something that's been in dispute, and it's subject to a renegotiation of terms by us. We're going to renegotiate some of the terms, and if they'd like, we'll see if we can get that pipeline built. A lot of jobs, 28,000 jobs.
Well, I think it's good news, absolutely. It's good news that we're able to move forward on some energy infrastructure. And of course, we know it will reduce costs for the energy industry and ultimately ensure greater resources going back to Canadians as a result. But and so it's good news. It's very good news.
But that yes vote doesn't mean it's a done deal. It could still take years before construction on Keystone XL gets underway, if it ever does. Landowners, environmental groups, and Indigenous leaders have all launched several lawsuits to block Keystone's construction.
We'll continue to fight the Keystone route and what it means for our water, for our land, for our future generations, our resources, and all those natives and non-natives that are impacted by this, and all of our people. We're not happy about this. You heard it today.
Keystone is meant to carry Alberta oil sands crude south to refineries along the U.S. Gulf Coast. A judge in Montana is now siding with Indigenous and environmental groups and ordering a temporary halt to construction.
The Keystone XL pipeline has suffered yet another setback. The U.S. Supreme Court rejected a request from the Trump administration to allow construction of parts of the Keystone XL pipeline that have been blocked by a federal judge in Montana. The court upheld a lower court ruling. And as Eric Sorensen reports, after years of legal battles, that means the future of the pipeline is again up in the air.
So there's your history lesson. Jennifer, why don't you drop some more on us?
Okay, so of course, yesterday, Joe Biden, one of the first things he did was halt the construction of the Keystone Pipeline, or KXL, which actually goes from Nebraska to Alberta. So it's not the entirety of the Keystone Pipeline that would cross through what's called the Dakota Access Pipeline, which of course has already been constructed. So this, from my vantage point, I'm most concerned with the impacts this has on Native peoples and how this plays out in the longer arc of relationships between Indigenous peoples and the federal governments, especially in the context of treaties. So you have a lot of positivity from a lot of water protectors and Native people who think this is a good sign about what could potentially happen. And part of the KXL, where the construction was halted, actually went through the Fort Peck Reservation in Montana and potentially could contaminate their water. So this was a victory of sorts for them. But I want to read a little bit of the statement from Kevin Keller. He is the current president of the Oglala Lakota Nation. And he starts with, quote, President Biden's decision to cancel the permits for the KXL pipeline demonstrates his willingness to listen and follow through for tribal nations, listen to tribal voices, and respect tribal lands. For your action and protection of our water and lands, Mr. President, myself and the Oglala Lakota Nation want to thank you. We look forward to having a healthy line of communication between our governments, building upon and recreating innovative ideas to further our bonds and together thinking forward to create enduring friendships. And this is a really big show of diplomacy on behalf of the Sioux Nation. And it's also an expression of sovereignty because the Oglala Nation is a sovereign nation in relationship to the U.S. federal government. And so what's really, I think, going on here, and what I think is particularly interesting, is there's a sense of optimism here, but also a sense of we want to work with you and we're going to hold you accountable, which has been really kind of the longer arc of history between Native peoples and the U.S. federal government has been really problematic. And if you looked at a lot of what was going on with DAPL, it was this kind of breaking the treaties of Fort Laramie that were negotiated in 1851 and 1868. So I think this is a good step moving forward, but you also have a lot of Native people who are not willing to be complacent about this and are like, no, this is great, but you need to undo what's already been done, and really stand up and honor the treaties that the U.S. federal government has, gone back on for so long, and recognize the sovereignty of these Native nations as, equal governments, which I could get into a longer history about that going back to 1830 in the Marshall Trilogy, but I will save the audience. But it's just, again, it's a really kind of optimistic moment for Native nations who were fundamentally impacted or were going to be fundamentally impacted by this last part of construction of the Keystone Pipeline, both in the US and in Canada. But it also, there's a sense of optimism that potentially you have an incoming administration who's willing to work with and listen to Native nations and recognize their sovereignty and do government to government work.
Malcontent Angie said she is so glad that you were talking about this. Just take a wiggle. I don't know. It's like an eye chart. Your screen name is an eye chart. Sending their praises to all of the water warriors and everyone who defended in the Dakotas for their work that they did in the comments that they have going there.
Absolutely.
I lived in South Dakota for 18 months. I always joke it was 17 months too long because I lived in the ugly part of the state. But I spent a lot of time in the outdoors, particularly in Nebraska, up along the border of South Dakota, the Sandhills region. And part of that pipeline would have to run through the Sandhills region. It's an absolutely gorgeous area, and it is home to one of the largest aquifers on the planet. And it is critical infrastructure for the drinking water of a vast number of states. The other thing there's a couple of things that jump out at me. So I'll do 3 facts. So that's number 1. So I'll do number 2. This oil isn't for the United States. Nope. This Alberta, Canada tar sand oil is to get it to the ports in the Golden Triangle so that they can export it. It's not for us because our refineries aren't calibrated to not a significant number of refineries are calibrated to process that oil. You can't just take any type of crude oil and drop it in a refinery. They're calibrated to work with specific types of crude oil. So that's fast fact number 2. Number 3, Freight Broker was Steve over at Freight Broker was losing his shit this morning over Keystone XL. That was his lead story.
Oh boy.
And one of the things that jumped out at me with Steve at Freight Broker was this is going to cost 11,000 jobs. I heard Donald Trump saying this was creating 28,000 jobs. And the 11,000 jobs that would be created are just temporary jobs. These are not permanent jobs. If the pipeline is ever completed, it'll literally only be a couple of hundred people that will be working the pipeline.
Exactly. So I think, too, I just want to add, in case people aren't aware, I want to re-up the DAPL syllabus that came out during the protest that was crafted by both non-Indigenous and Indigenous scholars. If I can provide a link to you guys later, I will. It's fantastic if you want to read up on that. One of the scholars, her name is Audra Simpson. She's Mohawk. She wrote this amazing book called Mohawk Interruptus, and she talks about the difficulties of Native nations that extend beyond both borders. It's a fantastic book. The entire syllabus is fantastic. And if people are interested in learning more about the water protectors and what they're fighting for in these treaties, it is a fantastic resource. But also thinking too about like disproportionate uses of force in water against water protectors versus, those that came into the Capitol. So I think this is a really important issue. This has really major consequences for Native nations on both sides of the Canada-US border. It's really something worth investing time and energy in learning about.
Malcontent Carter says, oh, good, 11,000 jobs. Let's poison everybody's water supply.
Exactly.
And it was just a Kiwi gal. Now I'm just totally embarrassed that I couldn't figure that out. My late Gen X came out with that there. What the hell is that? So I freely embrace it. Jennifer, thank you so much for that story. We're going to do a little pause for the cause, and then we're going to move on to our COVID 5 Fast Facts.
Okay.
Black Coffee is a hub for communities and a hub for meeting people, making friends, and understanding.
What Black Coffee is to me is a place to actually call home, a place where Black youth will feel welcomed, where Black families will come and feel like they're at home.
What we're trying to build is more than just coffee. Community is something that we do naturally. We know who's in the community, we know what the deficits are, and we're trying to fix that. We want to bring people together.
My hope is that the phrase grounded in excellence shows up everywhere and that it becomes a movement.
I'm looking forward to hanging out at Black Coffee with my friends and feeling safe.
Black Coffee to me means opportunity for people like me and my other friends and family to come here and do homework safely and hang out and stuff like that.
That is happening. It is happening.
Just a reminder, Malcontents, the Seattle Police Department arrested somebody for breaking windows at a Starbucks in Seattle, and there's still been no arrests, even though a video exists that shows the two people that threw firebombs and tried to burn down Black Coffee Northwest on October 1st. And this is kind of the institutional racism that gets me pretty frustrated and upset. So if you want to support a Black-owned business that is attempting to, as you saw in the video, create a safe space for Black people, what you can do as a white ally is go to these safe spaces of Black people and you can support their business. By the way, the coffee is amazeballs and the potato scones, oh my God, the potato scones. I've had too many potato scones.
Do you like amazeballs?
And with that, we will go ahead to our next update.
Okay.
And our next update, Jennifer, takes us to our COVID 5 Fast Facts. You know what? I'm going to call out the mainstream media, Jennifer, because although I will say it does show that the Biden administration's White House has tried to jump in front to control the narrative. Because I did notice that the headlines for COVID today were a lot more hopeful than they were 48 hours ago. And believe me, I don't want to give Trump and that insurrectionist, I can call him a dirtbag because he's a past president now, insurrectionist dirtbag that he is, but it's not lost on me that the news cycle seemed to have gotten a lot more positive in the last 48 hours of COVID. Like, for instance, I actually couldn't find anything in preparing notes tonight, you know, on the headlines of like, 4,000 more people died today. Like, which we probably know that number is somewhere around there in the reality. But I guess here is our upbeat COVID 5 Fast Facts. You're going to find this one interesting, Jennifer. Congressman Steve Silvers, he's a Republican out of Ohio. What he suggested is as a condition for getting a $1,400 stimulus check, in this upcoming stimulus package they want to pass to kind of keep the economy chugging along, You have to get a COVID vaccination if you want to get the check. That's a Republican congressman's suggestion.
I call bullshit on that for one, actually multiple reasons. But we don't have the infrastructure yet to supply people with vaccines in that way because the rollout was such a freaking disaster. We don't have the stores of vaccine to support that. And then how long is it going to take to get people vaccinated and then be able to pay them? That would go on forever. That is completely I understand people need to get vaccinated, get your vaccinations when you can, people, but that is not the way to do that.
Well, and then of course, what prevents creating a black market for getting a piece of paper saying that you got your vaccination for, say, $200? Just putting it out there. Not that I would do it. Either way, if I get a vaccination tomorrow, I get a vaccination tomorrow. Joe Biden, on his first full day in office, he has mandated the wearing of masks on all federal property. I would presume that includes things like national parks and national forests. I would not say, by the way, not saying chuds.
It's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
That I think that you're going to have to wear a mask inside of your tent if you're at some primitive campsite by yourself. But I do think, say, if you're inside an office or one of the porta potties, then the expectation is going to be you're wearing a mask in there. It also would mandates requiring masks on flights, which the federal government can do. This is something the airlines have wanted for months because basically without that federal mandate, the only thing they really could do with a non-compliant passenger was go, please.
Yeah, exactly. The last part of this point is pretty interesting, I think.
Joe Biden, yeah, exactly. Joe Biden was asked by a reporter today because we're having daily press conferences again.
Yeah.
And they're sane. And they're not run by people that Goebbels would go, I've wanted that woman on my propagandist teams. She's very attractive. She looks Aryan. And she is very, very good.
Yes.
He was asked, is he being overly ambitious on doing 100 million vaccines in 100 days? And he basically said, fight me. Joe Biden did. I mean, he didn't say bite me, but he basically was like, dude, watch it happen.
Yeah.
By the way, Joe, we're going to hold your feet to the fire on that one.
Exactly. Don't overpromise and underdeliver. But
We are going to hold your feet to that fire one. You have 99 days left, Joe, because today is day one.
Yep.
There's some people in public health, Jennifer, that are upset on the 100 million, saying it's actually not ambitious enough, by the way, because they're saying that's only 1 million vaccines a day.
Yeah.
This is an interesting one. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce has put its support behind all of President Biden's orders on COVID today. Full disclosure, my business that I run, we are members of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm members of the Chamber of Commerce because of the business connectivity, not because of but we are members. So full disclosure, they are generally a very GOP-leaning organization. Yeah. They did condemn Donald Trump after the 1/6 insurrection and basically said as an organization, they are not going to be supporting any more GOP candidates, and they'll be reevaluating that down the road. Who knew overthrowing the government would upset business people?
Yeah, shocking. Can't destabilize that money. Yeah, that's particularly interesting. Yeah, I don't have words for that.
USA Today is reporting that Alzheimer's deaths were up 16% from last year. And the attribution to that is the increased social isolation and the lack of mental stimulation, which is so critical with Alzheimer patients because of social distancing rules and dealing with, ironically, trying to keep them safe with COVID.
Yeah, that's tragic. I mean, I think we're in the middle of, like we weren't already prior to COVID, a really significant mental health crisis that's associated, of course, with this ongoing isolation and people not being able to both get the help they need, but also have kind of human interaction. And when you throw in something like this, like Alzheimer's on top of it, yeah, that's going to be another one of those things that's, I guess, not a side effect of COVID per se, but one of those things like that's going to be attributed to this period of COVID. And I don't know, it's a really, really sad thing.
And to be clear to our audience, they are not counting those as COVID deaths. They're Alzheimer's deaths. It's just Alzheimer's deaths have increased 16% in 1 year. And that is, you know, out of kind of standard deviation if you studied statistics and any point.
I got that wrong when I said attributed to COVID, but you know, we have this kind of mental health things that are being attributed to the quarantine as a result of COVID. And I think this is one of those things.
1 year ago today, or 1 year ago yesterday, the first COVID patient in the United States arrived at Everett Providence Hospital. And 1 year ago today, it was confirmed that that patient had COVID. They suspected COVID. The test came back today. 1 year ago today. We have a history lesson video clip for that. Or maybe not. Because as soon as like, no, that little lead-in's not on that clip. We do not have a history lesson video clip on that. So we're just going to go ahead and skip that. I know from the intro that was not right. You know, here we are a year later, Jennifer, and, you know, we're over 405,000 deaths.
Yeah, it's insane. I remember, you know, when they announced that it was in Seattle and how quickly things progressed from then. And we've come a long way, and not in a good way, in a year.
We have. And on the subject of coming a long way, but not in a good way, and we talked earlier about Seattle's police department's really lousy start to January. Jennifer, you've got a story about that for us. Tell us about Officer Eric Whitehead.
This fine, Joe. SPD is just on a roll in January. They're going to try and break their own record for, you know, dumb shit, apparently. Excuse my language. So on January 15th, Officer Eric Whitehead actually, who is now under investigation by the OPA, refused to wear a mask when going to a hospital to get a statement from an assault victim. So the article we have on the website, you know, it's an unnamed hospital, but it's believed to be Harborview, just because that is where, you know, most of assault victims are taken in the Seattle area. And so he blatantly refused to put on a mask despite positive patients nearby and standing in what was considered to be a high traffic hallway. He had to be asked by staff multiple times. He kept throwing away masks that they give him, which was a huge deal because of ongoing PPE shortages, especially within the medical community. And so the nurse finally escalates this charge to the charge nurse, and he becomes belligerent, condescending, but finally agrees to temporarily put on a mask. But he said that he would take it off when speaking with the victim, not only putting anybody else around them at risk, but also the victim who's just gone through assault, putting them in potential risk of contracting COVID. Again, our article on the website states that no hospital was identified, but they do think it was Harborview. And so this is just like one of many instances where, you know, SPD has done some kind of egregious things that have been reported, including complaining that they were not offered packaged snacks at Harborview, even though Harborview, basically because they found that COVID was transmitted easily through food, did away with even having single servage packages of food. But one of the worst parts of all of this comes from Safe Seattle. Dave Preston basically went out and attacked this nurse that reported this Officer Whitehead, as a snitch. So here we have this very belligerent, condescending person in a position of authority going to interview an assault victim at a large hospital in a high traffic hallway where there are COVID positive patients around, essentially refusing to wear a mask and completely disrespecting all protocol and all safety measures to protect not only himself, but the other people around him.
Yeah, not only did Dave Preston call her a snitch, he called her a liar, and not because she hesitated on whether he got the name right, but Dave Preston, before OPA made their statement, was like, I've talked to people on the inside and they told me, you know, like they've given me the real story and it's nowhere near bad as portrayed. And then a few hours later, OPA, Meyerberg from OPA came out and said, we've seen the security video and it's way worse than what the nurse said. So Dave Preston, are the police lying then? Right? Because like who's lying, Dave? And Dave Preston's the guy who started this rumor in September of 2019 about the murder in Beacon Hill with the severed head, and that wasn't true either.
Yeah, because he didn't understand natural decomposition. That was, what kind of a person, I was going to say something worse, but I won't. What kind of person do you have to be to basically go out there and use your platform to call a nurse who basically was trying to express concerns about the behavior of a police officer who's, supposed to be, serve and protect, not protecting the health of not only himself and the people who are working in the hospital, but the patients as well. And to call her a snitch and a liar, that takes a lot of guts. I'm trying to watch.
You know what the number one killer for police officers was on duty in 2020? COVID.
Yeah.
I just work here. Carrie, I saw your comment about your grandmother, if I remember serving correct. I know it went by a few minutes ago. We were doing this story on our 5 Fast Facts earlier, and Carrie said lost a parent to Alzheimer's. Not grandparent, apologies, but a parent to Alzheimer's, and feels that the inability to visit, the ability to have those interactions accelerated their decline.
Wow.
So there you go. We will continue to track the Eric Whitehead story, along with the literally dozen other stories that have come out about Seattle police officers, and just this growing list of OPA investigations. Did you watch any of Omari and his interview with Meyerberg from the OPA?
I did not. When was that?
I really encourage anybody, go to Converge Media. It was last week, or was it on Tuesday? So one of the mods put the date up there. I don't want to get the date wrong. I really encourage. I watched it. I know there were people who were like, they didn't like Meyerberg, they didn't like his attitude. It wasn't the greatest interview for him, but the biggest takeaway from me is how worthless OPA is. As Meyerberg, kind of explained, I'm in this really tight little box, and that's all we can do. And Jennifer, a great example of this, I read the OPA findings on the inaccurate tweet about the IED candles. And in a functioning system, if you're interviewing the person and you conclude that the person who sent the tweet, because that is who OPA went after, was pressured to send a tweet, in a functional organization for oversight, they would then go to the supervisor, the person that said, no, send that fucking tweet.
What's the F-bomb? This is written.
Right? And they would investigate that person. But the OPA doesn't have any authority to kind of go down the holes. So at the end of the day, what the finding is, which of course the Chuds,
it's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller,
will jump onto, is, well, they found out there was no wrongdoing. But when you actually read the report, it's like, oh, this is really shitty. Not only is it shitty, it's like scary shitty. And I know I'm rehashing something we talked about in the last show. Jennifer, thank you for the Whitehead story. And I think we're going to do a little pause for the cause, and then we're going to move on to our next story. And on the subject of that, because I haven't brought it up yet, if you haven't done it, like, follow, share. It helps us grow. And the other thing is spam those hearts. Let those mods and admins know that you really appreciate the work they do. Our mods, admins, research team, and editors are paid in hearts. And with that, we will go ahead and do a little pause for the cause.
Okay.
Jennifer, we actually did this story back on December 23rd.
Yeah.
On the website. It's a little nervous laughter because this is a really awful topic. But we did this story back on December 23rd on the website, and then the news cycle went absolutely insane. And we even reached a point where I would stop saying, like, it's coming. It was just like, but we're finally here. The story on abusive head trauma is here. So one of the mods and admins, if you could go on to malcontentnews.com, find the story, it's December 23rd, and put a link in the comments, then our audience can go to that story that we're talking about. Abusive head trauma is probably more known by a lot of people as shaken baby syndrome. And shaken baby syndrome was coined about 45 years ago. And there were several doctors who came up with what they felt was this triad of symptoms. And the triad of symptoms, put in layman's terms, is bleeding around the brain, retinal bleeding, and brain damage. And what they concluded was if an infant or a toddler appears with these three symptoms, the only possible way that this could happen is if the baby was violently shaken. And that science has started to be called into question, and it's been called into question for a decade, in part because medical science has gotten better. Our ability to diagnose and test, especially with imaging for brain injuries, has gotten much better. But what happened, Jennifer, is in the 90s, several hospitals around the country started almost becoming specialist centers for shaken baby syndrome. A term, by the way, that isn't really used anymore in medical circles. It is considered archaic and inaccurate. We're going to go ahead and roll a clip to give some background and history on that. Caveat. These clips talk about child abuse. They have parents who are guilty of child abuse. They have parents who were accused of child abuse and then found not to have committed abuse. This is a very sensitive and difficult topic. So again, not your thing. Go find something to do for about 3 minutes and come back.
Baby Colt's former babysitter refused to look at the pictures of the little boy she was supposed to take care of.
You'd see him and he would smile. Just ear to ear. His future could have been anything he dreamed of.
Instead, she looked down and away, wiping tears from her eyes, getting ready to receive her prison sentence.
That was my first grandson, and he got taken away from me.
Kelsey Briseno shook the 12-month-old so hard he almost died, but for months, he lived with what was left of his brain swollen outside his skull.
Good evening, everyone. A raging debate in child abuse cases is getting louder.
It has to do with shaken baby syndrome, the traumatic brain injury it can cause, and a few now say it doesn't exist at all.
But across the country, cases are being dismissed or overturned on appeal. Critics say shaken baby syndrome is being misdiagnosed based on a narrow set of criteria, convictions based on science that's now being questioned.
Shaken baby syndrome was first developed as a theory 40 years ago, that infants with 3 specific signs or symptoms had injuries that were caused by violent shaking, and that nothing else could cause them.
All three experts say there's a variety of causes for those same three symptoms, even a premature birth or vitamin D deficiency, which DeClara believes is the case with her son. But in her case, the doctor told the judge that theory is not commonly accepted in the medical community.
A lot of kids can get subdural hematomas from trauma and from other reasons.
Biomechanics is adding to the skepticism. The Washington Post conducting an experiment with baby dummies and found a grown man shaking a 22-pound baby generated only 6 Gs of force, while a short fall can generate more than 10 times the force of shaking alone.
In your medical opinion, have you ever seen a case where just shaking the child caused the fatal injury?
No.
It's a tough story and it's a tough topic. So why are we covering this? The reason we're covering this is in the research around this, about 1,300 people a year or 1,300 children are identified of suffering from abusive head trauma. The challenges that you have is that when a child arrives in the emergency department and presenting with abusive head trauma, they are typically nonverbal. They're going to be either nonverbal because of their injuries or they're nonverbal because of their age. So they are incapable of advocating for themselves, both good and bad. And what I alluded to is that some hospitals, Jennifer, had started creating these departments that specialize in the investigation of abusive head trauma. But what was going on at these facilities is that the social workers and the doctors that were involved were kind of basing this all on this questionable science. And surprise, surprise, at the hospitals where they set up these centers of, centers of excellence or centers of research, the number of people that were getting labeled child abusers arriving in the emergency departments exploded. At one hospital in Nebraska, it almost went up exponentially. Meanwhile, child abuse numbers were not going up at overall numbers, and the statistics were not going up at the same time on the curve. And guess who was getting caught up in the most child abuse allegations?
People of color.
BIPOC. Exactly. BIPOC, and here's the interesting thing. If you went through the hierarchy, if you were white, straight couple, married, and wealthy, you were the least likely to be accused. And as you kind of went down the ladder, if you were BIPOC and poor, and say English was a second language for you, you were the most likely to be accused. So much so that it goes out of the statistical capabilities. And when data scientists looked at all of the available data and tried to account for every possible factor that they could imagine, the outliers didn't fit. The other thing that they discovered is that if a white wealthy parent show up in the emergency room and they're like, Bobby fell down the stairs and Bobby's actually getting abused, they're more likely to believe Bobby fell down the stairs versus if a BIPOC parent shows up and says Bobby fell down the stairs, they're treated more like a suspect.
Yep. Sadly, that does not surprise me at all. If you look at the rates in which children are removed from BIPOC homes, and this has been a really big thing within Indigenous communities. Of course, there was a big case last year about, the name is escaping me, but there's actually an act in place that now helps to protect Native kids being taken out of and placed in non-Native homes and allow them to go to live with family members. So this isn't surprising to me at all. It's gross, but I think this is just another strong example of the systemic racism at work within our society.
And in the medical community, which is also well documented. The one thing I wanted to say, I am not up here saying that abusive head trauma in children does not exist. Children are shaken. It's a crime, and it should be taken away. And there are other signs that they are learning beyond these three symptoms, because originally the thought was the only way you could get these three symptoms was by shaking a child. But what they have learned is, as some of the things that were brought up, preemies can display these three symptoms as they're continuing to grow and develop. Another thing that can happen here is that children that are born with a seizure disorder, if they are having repeated seizures, they could start displaying all of these symptoms. And the challenge is blood around the brain and brain damage can be signs of untreated severe seizures that are going on. And what parents have reported is that if the social workers or a medical person has concluded it was child abuse, they are completely cut out. So parents that have been falsely accused have gone, well, wait a minute, we want an MRI or we want to get this done. And the state just comes in and says, we're not doing any of that. You're an abuser. Done. And there's been some cases, Jennifer, where they've actually blocked tests that not only would help exonerate the parents, but would possibly help treat the child.
Yeah. So, I mean, think how many children were potentially placed in the system or taken away from their parents because of this?
Well, what's happening is what's happened over, say, about the last 10 years is literally hundreds of cases have been revisited and reversed. And parents have gone to prison over this. And as more evidence has emerged, parents are going back. But to be falsely accused of child abuse is in itself a traumatic experience, because part of the other research that we discovered was people who are falsely accused of child abuse develop a deep mistrust of the system, of the medical community, and of the government. What a shock.
Yep. No, absolutely. And I just wanted to point out when I was talking about this being an issue with Native people in particular, the 1978 Indian Child Welfare Act. That's why the name I forgot. So I wanted to get that out there. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think there are so many. So when my son was actually 2, I used to work in horse racing. And so he was in the barn with me one day and he was standing on a bale of hay and he'd fallen off. And so when he fell off, he kind of knocked himself out and he had blood coming out of his ear. So I called an ambulance. I went through, because of course, you know, I'm working in horse racing. I'm a single parent. I was like filthy dirty when they came, and I go to take him to the emergency room. We're in Portland. I got grilled like people in there, you know. Luckily, I had a witness that was there and saw it, but it was kind of leaning towards this, you know, did something more erroneous kind of happen thing. So I can't even imagine what it must be like to be, you know, accused of this and have it go to court and, you know, have this be something that's on your permanent record, but also, you know, potentially lose access to your child because of it.
Yes, and it's traumatic for the child. It's even more traumatic for the child if the parent has been loving and kind and did nothing wrong. It's very traumatic for the child and to be torn away from their parent like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
The critical things, not a lawyer, but the critical things are, one, if you suspect at all that there is a closed head injury, I mean, if there's an open head injury, you should be going to the doctor or doc in the box or an ER, period. If you even remotely expect there is a closed head injury, you should get your child checked out. That's number one, because one of the red flags is, and it is more of a marker of potential abuse, people that abusers, when they're like, oh God, I almost killed my kid, are very reluctant to take them to the ER. Yeah. You hear these stories of they waited 2 days, they waited 4 days, and the child is deteriorated to a point. Mm-hmm. So that's point number one. You know, point number two is, remember, Child Protective Services has almost extrajudicial power that goes beyond the Constitution. And my counsel to you, lawyer up or get a social worker and don't talk to them. And that's my counsel. That would be my counsel to you if you're looking at an accusation. And the other thing is that I will close this with, if you're a parent and if you're frustrated, and I've read nobody that says I'm ready to beat my kid, and I think that I mean it, but you know, with the COVID and you're locked in and your stuff, get help, right? Call a friend. You know, the other thing is, look, there's a couple of times my kids screaming their heads off, yada, 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 meaning, you know, if they're in the crib, they're not going anywhere. You just go outside, take a quick walk around the block, or even just up and down the driveway or something for a few minutes, just kind of clear your head. Yeah. Or if you're in an apartment, walk in the hallway for a couple of minutes right outside the door. That's not child abuse. You're keeping close enough to the kid. Just get your breath. If you reach that point where you're, then walk away. Walk away.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Jennifer, thank you for the conversation. We're going to move on to our final story.
Oh, man.
And our final story, terrible throw. It's our Insurrection update. Jennifer, why don't you start us off with our breaking news? We're going to go back and forth, Malcontents.
All right. So breaking, Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Twitter says she has filed impeachment papers on Joe Biden for what we're not entirely sure. She also is under increasing fire to resign after it was discovered she is a Parkland truther, a Sandy Hook truther, and a 9/11 denier. Why? Just why?
Way to go, Georgia. Way to go. I mean, we really appreciate Warnock and Ossoff, but you have unleashed this upon the country, Georgia.
Yeah, I have no words. This is the same woman that wore the censored mask, correct?
This is the same woman that wore a censored mask while talking on the floor of the House. Yes.
She's so censored.
By the way, the video that she shot saying that she was she was filing impeachment sure looks like it was done in a basement hallway in a government building, not wearing a mask, which of course I'm sure was just, you can't make me.
Yeah, so I'm going to go hide where there's nobody else. Yeah. Oh, please let me talk about Lauren Boebert, please.
Okay, I know. I was going to say, it's funny when we gave it, it was like, oh, you're going to have to start. I know she's one of your favorites. So yes, you can start with your favorite.
So the poster child for stay-in-school kids, Rep. Lauren Boebert, is facing increasing calls for a full investigation and providing aid and comfort to seditionists. Her tour group on 1/5/21, you remember the one she said she did not partake in, is now confirmed, but she says it was only family members. There are accusations her mother was among the domestic terrorists on 1/6, providing intel and aid to insurrectionists.
What a gal.
She's a good gal. Good gal.
Great American values there.
Colorado.
Death to America. That's not a pro-life platform for me.
Yes, that's right.
All right, so I just did a little Early Collier quote there. Totally worthless trivia for you, Jennifer. Early Collier of Squidbillies. He was voiced over, I did say past tense, by this guy who goes by a stage name of Unknown Hinson. He is a comedy writer. He got fired from doing the voice of Early Collier this summer. You know why?
Why?
Because it turns out he's a complete racist chud piece of crap, just like the squid that he had played for 15 years on Squidbillies.
That explains why he was so good at it then.
He was method acting.
Yes. Jeez.
All right, I'll start with the first arrest. We have another long list of arrests.
Oh, yeah.
Guy Refit of Texas was arrested for his role in 1/6 insurrection. One of the things that Guy did when he came back was he told his kids that he would murder them if they outed him, saying, you know what happens to traitors.
Oh, my God. Okay. Wow. So when is he accepting his Father of the Year award?
This is somebody that Child Protective Services should be talking to, by the way.
Jesus. This is not funny. The you know what happens to traitors part is a little amusing, but the fact that you're threatening.
Well, Guy's going to find out what happens to traitors. All right, you get the next one.
So, Proud Boy leader and field commander in Washington, D.C. on November 6th, after Enrique Tarrino's arrest, was Jesus Rivera of Florida, and he filmed himself storming the Capitol, put it on social media, And guess what, guys? There's consequences for your action. He's arrested.
Yeah, that's Joe Biggs.
Yeah.
Joe Biggs got his ass arrested. Oh, that was perfect. Right on the lens. All right, William Calhoun. He's a lawyer. He's a lawyer. Jennifer. He's a lawyer from Georgia. He kicked in Nancy Pelosi's door. He's been arrested and denied bail. The judge indicating that if he didn't respect Capitol Police, he didn't respect the Capitol or the government, he sure wasn't going to respect a bail order from the judge.
Wow. Wow. So, wow. Okay. I can't even with these people. My goodness. And I just realized I read the one off the wrong page. Yeah. What do you even say to that? William Calhoun. That sounds like an old-timey president name.
He sounds like he's from Georgia and he's a lawyer. Your Honor, I'm William Calhoun, and I'm here to tell you that this boy here is innocent. He looked at the victim. The victim looked at him crosswise. And you know here in the state of Georgia, that's illegal.
Are you sure he wasn't like opposing counsel to Matlock at one time? Like, that's...
Our Gen X roots are showing, Jennifer.
What?
Our Gen Z audience just went, who the fuck is Matlock?
The F-bomb.
Look it up.
This is written. This is written.
All right, you get the next one. After William Calhoun. We beat poor William Calhoun into the ground.
Yes, Patrick Edward McGahee was arrested for assaulting a Capitol Police officer. In the video, seen millions of times, McGahee beat and pressed the police officer with a riot shield as blood started to come out of the officer's mouth. He's in jail.
I hope that he is going to look at harsher charges than a protester who broke windows out of a Starbucks in Seattle.
Yes, I would hope so. I would definitely hope so, but we'll see.
Christopher Kelly of New York, who traveled with the Proud Boys to Washington, D.C., posted photos of himself with a domestic terrorist. He also traveled with his brother, who is a retired New York Police Department officer.
Wow. That's a lot to take in. Proud Boys and a cop brother.
It's a family affair.
Apparently. It's like the trifecta. All right. So Samuel Camargo was arrested on 4 charges. During his interview, he became belligerent with the FBI, questioned their loyalty to the country. I'm sorry, I'm trying not to laugh. And then posted on social media, quote, just finished speaking to an FBI agent. I believe I've been cleared, end quote.
They didn't say what state he was from. I'll bet Florida. I know. You're getting the good ones tonight, Jennifer. I'm starting to feel bad I gave up Lauren Boebert.
Woo! Man. All right. Your turn.
All right. Hey, I just told off the FBI, questioned their loyalty to the country, but I think the interview went really well. Oh my goodness gracious. All right. Samuel Fisher. He posed with pictures of the Capitol with a gun in front of the Trump flag, and he wrote the caption, "Can't wait to bring a liberal back to this Freedom Palace." He's being held without bail. And Jennifer, I'm willing to bet that he's probably very upset because Biden came for his guns.
Oh, yeah. And he didn't get to bring a liberal back to his Freedom Palace. That's like a bad pickup line. It's like something that would happen on Tinder. Like, you know, some conservative dude out there going, yeah, I'm looking for a liberal woman to bring back to my palace.
There you go, guys. If you're looking for a hot date with Jennifer, you can drop this line. I want to bring you back to my liberal Freedom Palace. I want to bring a liberal to my Freedom Palace.
Woo! I'm sweating. Okay.
Woo!
Carl Dresch of Michigan put up extensive social media posts and pictures about his actions in D.C. and I'm missing a page here.
He's arrested.
Yes, he's arrested. Oh, yeah, that was it.
Jesus Rivera of Florida filmed himself storming the Capitol, put it on social media. Yeah, and Jesus was arrested yesterday.
All right. They're getting, oh, wait. Gina looks like she's interesting. Okay. Joseph Foy of Michigan was arrested for attacking a D.C. police officer at the Capitol with a hockey stick.
This is the one that cracked me up because Michigan and a hockey stick.
Yeah.
We're storming the Capitol.
That's so cliche. Okay.
My
Wow.
weapon of choice is a hockey stick. Emmanuel Jackson was filmed attacking police officers with a metal baseball bat. Amazing that can get you arrested in the United States of America. I hope that Emmanuel Jackson faces charges equally as harsh as Jake Greenberg is facing for using a bat on a Seattle Police Department officer. And that is something, Jennifer, that I'm going to be tracking very closely on how is Jake charged versus these federal insurrectionists charged.
Absolutely. Oh, Gina. Gina
You get Gina.
Bissiniak, who was seen in the Capitol wearing a Louis Vuitton sweater. She's so oppressed. Was also part of the crowd that crushed the police officer with a shield and ripped his mask off. She was heard screaming at the police to, quote, stand down, end quote, and told one officer, quote, you just hurt my fucking leg, end quote. My guess is her and her Louis Vuitton sweater are arrested.
Louis Vuitton. I'm oppressed.
Who wears Louis Vuitton to an insurrection? God.
I bought this at Century 21 in New York. It's Calvin Klein.
Wow.
You just hurt my fucking leg. World's smallest violin just for you.
Okay, wow. This is a lot.
Robert Gieswine, Gieswein, Gieswein of the Oath Keepers was arrested for assaulting police officers with bear mace and a baseball bat. Here's another one to watch and see. Does he face charges like Jake Greenberg is facing?
Oh,
I just want equal protection under the law, equality, not asking for a lot.
Oh, Nicholas Moncada, a 20-year-old fashion student from New York, was arrested after posting selfies of himself outside of Nancy Pelosi's office. He's arrested. Let's hope he doesn't try to use those pictures for his portfolio.
And then the last one that we have on the arrest story is an update on Jenna Ryan. Jenna Ryan was the one that got invited to go in the private jet and said, yes, I'll go in the private jet because he's cute and I want to hook up with him. And then he ended up hooking up with someone else. And she was the one that was talking to any camera that someone would stick in her face and said she deserves a pardon from Donald Trump. Well, none of the insurrectionists got a pardon. And guess what? Gina's not talking to anybody anymore. Or Jenna. I don't know if she goes by Gina or Jenna. You could pronounce that name either way.
Yeah. Let me play the world's smallest violin there. Yeah.
She's gone quiet.
I know. No pardon. Didn't get to hook up with the cute dude that she flew to the insurrection with. And she had a rough go, that one.
You get impeachment.
Sweet. Impeachment paperwork has not been delivered to the Senate, and both parties are being coy on timing. Nancy Pelosi, in theory, could deliver to the Senate tomorrow. McConnell wants to stall hearing until February, go figure, claiming that Trump doesn't have a legal team together. Well, whose fault is that? Because he doesn't pay anybody. I'm out of line on my notes here. Oh, yes, here we go. I knew this one. South Carolina, Butch Bowers was hired by Trump to be his legal representative. Butch Bowers, from South Carolina. For the impeachment hearing tonight, Trump advisor Jason Miller will not say if he will be the only lawyer. And finally, Schumer and McConnell are working on the procedure for an impeachment trial, with McConnell working as the minority leader in the role.
Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. It has such a beautiful ring to it. Did you know that the last president to lose the White House, and Senate in one term was Herbert Hoover?
Yeah, I did know that. But can you imagine how troubling it must be for Mitch McConnell to have like his name and minority used in the same breath?
And with that, Jennifer wins the internet, ladies and gentlemen. I sure hope that Butch Bowers got paid in advance, because if he thinks he's going to make money off this gig, he's out of his mind. All right, see if I can do it again.
Go.
Oh!
You know, we can't see, and you could totally say that you made it.
Well, no, I'm trying to bounce it off the lens of the camera, so they know when I don't make it.
Okay.
All right, police, fire, EMS fallout. We have a long story here about police officer Tam Din Pham of the Houston Police Department. He was arrested yesterday for his involvement in the D.C. riots. He denied that he was anywhere near the Capitol and that he was in Washington, D.C. on January 6th on a business trip. Mm-hmm. When the FBI did a search of his phone, they discovered there wasn't a single picture from January 6th on his phone. So they dug a little deeper and they found all the deleted pictures. Boys and girls that are watching this, if you're in the Capitol, let me explain a couple of things to you. Number one, your phone has a serial number that's unique to your phone. If your phone was on and you were in the Capitol, you were pinging cell towers because the phone system wasn't turned off. That's just a stupid conspiracy. They know exactly where you were and they know exactly the phone because of the serial number. Because the serial number goes back to the carrier. And then the GPS data goes back to where you were in the building. And if they don't have the GPS data, they can triangulate your position off of 3 cell towers. That's number one. Number two, when you delete something off of a phone, it's not deleted. It's kind of like if you just erase an address out of an address book. That doesn't mean that you erase the existence of the building at that address. You just erased the address location. So it's not very hard to go look in the memory and find the shit that you deleted. And he was a cop. Jennifer, he's a cop.
Yeah, I read this earlier, actually. Yeah. Yep.
So they found lots of pictures of him in the Capitol, and then he was reminded, being a cop, that perjury is a felony, and he should just tell the truth at this point. He told the truth. So that is a current on-duty Houston police officer that represents the 3rd police officer arrested. You get the next one.
Thomas B., a retired New York firefighter, was arrested after sending a relative of his girlfriend selfies of himself inside the Capitol. Bond is set at $100,000, which he miraculously posted.
He posted it the same day. It's that fat New York City Fire Department pension. I get it. Post 9/11, I'm not going to begrudge it. But, dude, you're a disgrace to your uniform. And you're a disgrace to this country. Particularly if you were a firefighter during 9/11.
Wow.
Here's the one that's concerning. 1 out of 5 of those that have been arrested to date, Jennifer, are current or previous military or law enforcement.
Yes. That's
1 in 5.
Oh! Did you get it?
I nailed it. It was just perfect arc. Great moments in Jewish sports history. Hava, Havena, Gala, Havena.
All right.
We're having fun tonight, Jennifer. We're having fun. Jennifer, we're right at 90 friggin' minutes. I can't believe it.
Stop yet. We have one more thing.
We do have one more thing.
Officers. The 3 SPD
Oh, that's
officers.
right. Go ahead. You drop it. You do it. We left one out. You're right.
Yeah, so 3 SPD officers are now under investigation for whatever their role they played in the insurrection after they turned themselves in.
Yeah, we were there. We figured we'd let you know before you figured out we were there. The other thing that was interesting, Como ran this story. Again, Meyerberg, we're saying his name a lot out of OPA. Yeah. Seattle, the city of Seattle, the police department has lowered the bar on where firing would be at. Originally, they were like, if they were Diaz did this thing with the first 2 officers. If they were inside of the Capitol, if they committed any violence act. Now what they've said is, if they crossed the barricades and walked on the grounds of the Capitol, out. Because, oh, that's right, that was trespassing. And Chuds.
It's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
It's been trespassing since 9/11. That lawn has been closed off to the public since 9/11. So it's not like this was some new magical thing to get people in trouble on January 6th. And a Seattle police officer should know better than crossing a police barricade, seeing all of the literal skulls that they've cracked and gassed and et cetera, over the last 7 months at police barricades, including stuff we've caught on camera.
So, SPD, it's on a roll.
I think if there's a future insurrection, they should just tell the Seattle Police Department it's all Antifa and fly them to Washington, D.C. Problem solved.
Yes.
They have all these Trump flags. Those are disguises. Didn't you? Don't you read the Q stuff? Go get them.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Why were they so mean to us?
My favorite, though, is the chick that said she got mace but was rubbing an onion on her face. Oh, yeah.
All right. This is the time, Malcontents, to get your questions in. I know it takes about 20, 30 seconds. The other thing is, I'm going to say it again. Spam those hearts. Spam those hearts on Facebook, Twitter, Periscope. If you're on Twitch or YouTube, you can just type in "Love You Mods." It also messes with the algorithm and gets people to go, "Hey, wow, I should be watching that stuff because look at all the people commenting on it." Oh, for a second, I was like, I thought I was just going to like, oh, we have another patron to thank, but we don't. It's just actually a junk mail from patron. Remember, independent media is impossible without your generosity, and it's the patrons that help keep the lights on. We're actually starting to able to do some little things. Like one of the things you may not have heard me say tonight is about how nobody gets paid. We actually got to pay a writer today. It's the first time we were actually able, and that is possible because of you. So, and we have other people that are like, we want to write for you guys. It's a fascinating and it's a great journey, but it can't happen without your support. We have a question. Kimberly is asking, did I hear SPD just got a new contract and city okayed it just as bad as the last one? I don't know.
Yeah. I hadn't heard that yet.
We'll dig into it. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I would have thought it would be news story. I didn't see anything in the news today. Any other questions? I know there were other questions. I saw questions go by, but I also know that malcontents answer questions among themselves while we're talking. So they may not feel like, well, we don't have to answer that one. I know Liberty had a question. I saw that kind of go. You guys were chatting like crazy, and I saw Liberty's question like mid-show, and it just went zip right up through the thing. So we're going to give a few more seconds, malcontents. Well, you can't say that we didn't give you a chance for your feedback. Jennifer, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to a quieter weekend.
Yeah. It's Thursday, right?
It's Thursday.
Okay.
Our Mondays since basically you've come onto the show as a guest host before we made you a permanent host. The Mondays have been insane around here. Fingers crossed.
Yes.
The rumor is Nancy Pelosi is going to walk over the impeachment papers to the Senate tomorrow, but it's kind of like that doesn't mean they're going to start a trial immediately the next day. So,
yeah.
And I'm still also not convinced that the Chuds aren't done with attempts at sectarian violence or other activity. But I think we're moving into a different phase than mass protests.
Yeah. Yep.
But the Proud Boys are very upset. They called Donald Trump weak and a failure.
They did. That's got to hurt his little feelers while he's out there playing golf.
I guess the modern SA isn't quite as loyal to der Orange Führer as they were to the other Führer. Okay, so wait a minute. We got a question asking about the Proud Boy with the furry hat in front. Did he get arrested? Yes, I know you're not talking about Dances with Traitors. That's the name I've been giving the guy with the horns. Apologies to Kevin Costner. I know it's like the other dude, the one that was wearing the police body armor, the really crappy, low-grade police body armor that he stole off of a cop. Like, that was pathetic. Bought that from China, body armor. He was arrested. I couldn't tell you his name at this point because I think we're up to about 150 arrests, and we've rattled off so many on the show. But I know he's arrested. Dances with Trey. Not him, LOL. So which one? Wait a minute. So we're not talking about Dances with Traitors with horns because he's arrested. Or are we talking about the other one that was all in the furry outfit that also had the police vest on that he stole? Because he was arrested too. Dances with Traitors and Facets with Traitors. Traders. Pam just came up with that for the other guy. I love it. All right, Jennifer, I think this is where I say my farewell. Say goodnight, everybody, Jennifer.
Good night, everybody. Thank you for watching.
I'm glad that we could see you in living color and in general full motion tonight. And with that, David and Jennifer, we are out of here.
Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with 3 key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events live as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
You fit the profile. You're the malcontent. Nobody wants to hear the nonsensical ravings of a loudmouth malcontent.
He said malcontents Antifa. Fuck you. You are the biggest hypocrite on the face of the planet.
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say.